In this episode of New York Next, we speak with Gary Vaynerchuk, who is CEO of VaynerMedia, a content creator and investor. He tells us how AI is an opportunity rather than something to fear.
The answer is to weaponize the opportunity instead of crying about it.
How he chooses where to compete.
I just think that if you're good enough, there's always an opportunity for you to come in.
And how creators are becoming the teachers for this generation. So today, actually, someone sent me a new Google AI program where you can upload an article.
Yes.
And it turns it into a 15, 20, however long podcast you want it to become.
Yes.
And that was so wild because it was such an impressive, interesting podcast that I enjoyed listening to.
Yes.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. That just struck me, though, as the most recent example of how AI could essentially replace so many creators. What is your take on that and other AI?
Like at the end of the day, someone still wrote that article.
Yeah.
So the way my brain goes is that just sounds like actually the people that were sad 10 years ago, you know, the people that wrote articles because they were getting replaced by podcaster. It just sounded like the person that writes articles is now back in the game. This is the thing with AI. It's kind of like the tractor. When the tractor came out, there was a lot of conversation in society many, many years ago that this was bad because 83% of people in the world worked on farms. What people didn't understand was the tractor was going to allow people to do bigger and better things. This hysteria at worst, or curiosity at best, of what is this going to mean? Is this bad? Are people going to be replaced? The answer is yes-ish. You know, don't forget, somebody that feels like they're about to get replaced by AI to make creative works in Photoshop. The people that got good at Photoshop replaced the people that used to draw on paper. But the person that drew on paper was allowed to learn Photoshop. And so this concept that robots are going to replace everyone here, that also could be in play. But the current state of what AI tools are being built and what they're going to do is they're going to rejigger the field much more than they're just going to outright replace everyone. Everyone's going to be looking at each other and we have a major problem. Could there be certain things? Of course there can. When Amazon innovated, that really hurt local bookstore owners.
Yeah.
You know, when Uber came along, that changed the game for people that own medallions in New York City, right? There will be certain things that happen that are really a big deal. But that's just the ebb and flow of everything. I mean, when supermarkets came along, they disrupted local markets in Main Street. And then you had Walmart come and disrupt the Kmarts and the ShopRites. Like, stuff's always changing.
Creative destruction, yeah.
It's what humans do. It's how the game is played. And so the real question is, are you gonna grab a surfboard and ride this wave? Or are you gonna put your head in the sand and let the wave kill you? And so I think it's pretty amazing because I think people are much more capable than they sometimes think of themselves. And I hope people see the AI thing as an opportunity versus the end.
So what is the surfboard in this scenario? How do you ride the AI wave as a creator or as anyone?
By creating your own AI libraries, by using the products to be more efficient. Like today, there are people right this second as we're filming this who are being paid as a designer. And they're being paid in their normal rate, and the client on the other side is accustomed to them needing 4 hours to make something. And they're paying them that way. That person is capable as a creator to actually learn and use AI and get it done in 7 minutes, and then, you know, get the same fee for at least now until the market adjusts.
Yeah.
And then spend 3 hours and 53 minutes with, you know, their family. The answer is to weaponize the opportunity instead of crying about it.
What ways has AI already changed what you're doing? Would you see using that tool for yourself?
Yeah,
to start creating
what's interesting,
additional podcasts, what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, those are all things we're looking at for sure. But I'll give you one that's maybe kind of more interesting and might bring value to the other people on the other side. I am seemingly talking all the time. In reality, the reason I produce so much content is a lot of what I do is actually listen. So I do a lot of consumer insight work. So I'm constantly, I mean, just at scale, thinking, pondering different things. Why have corduroy hats come into style? What is going on with this food trend? Politics, sport, literally I'm just curious why. So I have for the last 15 years spent a lot of time reading Twitter, reading social, and using Google. AI is saving me a ton of time of thinking. My co-pilot in thinking now is ChatGPT, Perplexity. I could ask much more distinct questions, prompt engineering. So I can ask a much more detailed question. If off the election the other day, it would have taken me longer to figure out when's the last time we've gone back to back with 4 years, 4 years, 4 years, not involving Nixon Ford. But it took me a second in asking it directly to ChatGPT with back in the late 1800s with Cleveland, and all that.
Yep.
That would have taken me 4 minutes, I think, on Google. That's a wildly big deal to have something that I really needed to know used to take me 4 minutes that took me 15 seconds. That adds up a bunch of times. That's just information. Search can do that. What search doesn't do as well as what AI will do in this scenario is when I go very detailed of, here's an example. Hey ChatGPT, every parent right now is freaking about the phone because they don't like their kids don't make eye contact. I am aware that the kaleidoscope had that same issue in the late 1800s. Can you give me the articles or the information that changed the trend where people realized that is literally something I did?
Wow.
That is not something I can do in Google search to get me something good.
Yeah.
So currently the way AI has changed my life is it is now my co-pilot, it is my partner in my strategy anthropology work, and I'm even sharper and more effective with clearer data and faster than I was a year ago.
It's like a research assistant that you would normally
That's
have
better
to...
than the best research kids right now, that like whoever the 25 best research kids that came out of the best schools, and they are the ones, they can't beat you saying, these are just insanely deep questions. Give me a historical reference when Iowa went Republican after by more than you can't do that. And if you're like me and you use history to predict the future and you use pattern recognition, I mean, there's not been a better tool ever created. So I'm very excited about it.
Okay, I love that. I love to hear a little bit more optimism about AI because you're right, there's been so much fear around it. Anytime there's something foreign, people react and they worry it's gonna take their job.
Even going back 25 years ago, anything new is always met with, when the iPhone came out, every BlackBerry head was like, no way. And I was like, you will all be on iPhones. It's the internet in your pocket. Now we live in a world, as you know, there's just much more, fear is a very popular currency right now. So you take the overarching thing that's going on in society and you plug it into new technology, which is always demonized and feared, and you have what we have right now with AI.
Yeah, interesting. Another kind of topical question I'm really curious to get your take on is just the role that individual creators and X played in this election. That was sort of a seismic shift away from traditional media. What is your take on that? Is that the future? Do you think traditional media institutions that we know have permanently lost their power?
Well, of course,
and what role did X play as well in the election?
I think X played the same role that Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok played. I think obviously because Elon owns it, there's a little bit more like it's been the punching bag or the champion, depending on what side you are. But this started with Obama's first campaign. The Obama campaign using Facebook is real life stuff. Like it's a little bit lost in the annals of history, I think, but that was a massive driver to the amount of young turnout that happened. So what role did it play? First of all, the thing that is wildly misunderstood by human beings is social media pipes are empty. They're mirrors. Nobody wants to believe it. They want to believe that Zucks and Elon and others and China are sitting in some sort of Wizard of Oz room and they're like, I'm gonna make you think this about this part of the world. Social media algorithms are written to feed you what you want. This is just what it is. And then they're like, oh, that's bad. How is that any different than you choosing what channel you're watching? Because I promise you on election night, from watching you to everything else, I watched all 19 things because I love watching production and strategy and all this. Like, there's very different things going on depending on how you see the world.
Yeah.
What role did it play? People's word of mouth makes people make different decisions. Celebrities' endorsements mean nothing, right? Because they talk about a J-Lo or a Taylor. What about the Joe Rogan and Elon endorsements in the other way? Did that mean nothing? People's opinions make us come up with opinions. Americans today are wildly non-accountable.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that people actually think that they're not in control. I think we've given so much power.
They don't feel they have autonomy.
I don't think people think they're capable without somebody's help. I think there's a really deep underlining psychology that people are not tapping into, which is we're putting these people on pedestals, celebrities, politicians. When John F. K. says, forget about what your country's doing for you, what are you doing for your country? That was a really fascinating framework. We are on the complete other side now. Literally, 90% of Americans, 45 and 45 on the left and the right, are just like, please person, save me. We're in what I call loser shit. If you literally think that a governor or a president or your boss or your parents are the variable of your success and happiness, you've lost on impact. Of course there's great power, especially with the situation we're now in, when you have a president that has both branches of Congress. Like now, yes, of course there are things, and I'm not.
There are exogenous factors, but that doesn't, for the most
But
part,
there's
impact
exogenous
somebody's
factors
daily life.
that are bigger than politicians.
Yep.
COVID, like weather. I just think that we're living in so much prosperity for so long that we're softer and we don't realize our accountability. So nonetheless, people's word of mouth has always mattered. In 1988, I'll use 1992 because I like that one better. In 1992, some neighbor went to a barbecue and said, "Did you see Ross Perot's thing?" And they were planning on voting for Bush or Clinton, and they're like, "That guy from," and then they watched his little special that night, and the guy co-signing Ross made them watch, and then they voted for Perot. Mm-hmm. Like, things happen. And now that's happening at scale because word of mouth is at scale on social media.
And social media is much more interactive too. So it's interesting because you mentioned in a way that you think the American populace is sort of abdicating responsibility.
That's what has happened.
But don't you think in a way that people feel that they have more control because they can look for their information on social media?
Yes, but I fully believe that a lot of people believe that. A lot of people also feel like we've lost control because of that. They don't want the merit of it. But I feel like when you really dig deep in, what's really happening is people are overvaluing figures in society right now in a way that we have not historically seen. It is, for example, if you just look at the human behavior, in 1962, I'm just gonna pick that year, the 26-year-old that's walking around America values their grandparents' opinion in a way that is unrecognizable today. 50 years ago, a grandfather's point of view in a home carried a lot of weight. We have become so infatuated with youth culture. Mm-hmm. We now make fun of our grandparents for not knowing how to use TikTok. We've become infatuated with looking younger, acting younger, and younger things matter. We're coming out of an era of hundreds of years of culture where the elder had the respect and now they have none. Well, when that elder had respect, that was someone you looked up to in a different way. With that void, we start to look into outside places. And so there's just a lot to it. Also, who was famous in 1962? Astronauts, pilots. Like, we were just in a different place culturally.
Yeah.
And so we're in an interesting time. I don't think it's bad.
Yeah.
I just think it is.
I've noticed a lot of people who come to you, a lot of the videos you post, you're obviously a CEO, you're a creator, you do all these things, but it seems like so much of what people look to you for is wisdom and advice. And I think that's really interesting.
I think the reason people come to me for that kind of stuff is because a lot of my content is about perspective. You know, like I believe that it's really hard to be successful or happy if you're not in a good place. I believe it's hard to be in a good place if you decide to look at everything that's bad instead of being grateful for what's good. Like the fact that we're even in New York City, working, like right now, like I just think like there's so many people that have so much adversity. It's so hard out there.
Yeah.
I'm on the board of Pencils of Promise. 800 million people on earth do not have access to clean water.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of millions of people who need a family member to walk for 12 hours a day with a bucket on their head to get to clean water. I struggle with not factoring that in when I'm upset about something.
Yeah.
So I think the reason people come to me is I think you pick your audience, not the reverse. So this is where people get confused. What you put out is what's gonna happen. So because I talk about perspective and humility and kindness and patience and tenacity and it's definitely a good mix of red and blue, right?
Yeah.
Then that's what I get.
Well, it seems like you've really integrated so much of your life because you do so many things. reading your bio, it's a little overwhelming to think about you have your hand in so many different pies.
Yes.
But when you talk about it, it does seem like it's all interrelated. And so in a way, when you're thinking about consumers, that has myriad applications. That has applications for content, investing.
Yes.
Tell me more about how
That's
you started layering on all these
It's a really good
things.
observation. It's why the marketing company is the center. It's the operating system. If VaynerX is the best at understanding consumers and knowing how to make music, make videos, make pictures, make content, and how to spend media to amplify it. Whoever can communicate in a contemporary way of the moment at scale was the winner. My operating system was, I will build a human infrastructure, not a technology, not a SaaS product, not a social network. I know me. I like humans. I like team. I knew that that's what I could build. I'm going to build a human infrastructure of the best practitioners in being the best contemporary marketers. How does that show up? It shows up with, then I'm able to then deploy that against, do you know Resi, the restaurant app?
Yes, of course.
I incubated that with the founder, Ben Leventhal, inside the Vayner machine. I started a direct-to-consumer wine brand called Empathy Wines. That was done by people that were trained at Vayner, and then that was a very big exit. VFriends, my Pokemon that I'm building, it comes from the essence of this. My personal brand, built from the essence of this, also it built this. And so now I sit in a place where no matter what I do, my pickleball team, right? My investments, no matter what I do, I have an infrastructure that can create demand.
Interesting.
Most things fail because they can't create demand.
Or they're created in a vacuum, like Quibi, where it's all these people sitting in an ivory tower who think, oh, this is a great idea, and they don't actually test it in a way. So you're able to sort of test things in real time.
Yeah, I mean, Quibi is just like, it's funny you brought that up. Quibi was, I'll never forget the first time I was pitched it. It was done, and I was like, you mean YouTube? Like, they weren't solving a problem.
Okay.
Quibi got caught in thinking that there was something in this short form video that was worth it, but the reality was they didn't recognize that it's kind of like dating apps. Mm-hmm. Dating apps are like, oh, I'm gonna go after Tinder. I'm like, what about Instagram DM? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, where do you think dating is actually happening? Sometimes things are happening that you can't see because a product that isn't seemingly doing the thing is actually doing the thing.
It's not labeled that
right.
way.
Quibi thought they were competing with Netflix.
Huh.
Quibi was competing with something that was doing it better than they were doing it for free with no cost to them.
You mentioned Resi, which is interesting because when we were thinking about what we wanted to ask you for this interview, you've gotten in a lot of already very saturated spaces, which is interesting. So Resi came after Open Table. And seemingly a lot of people would look at that and say, oh, well, there's already an existing service that does this. How could I possibly compete? Even with the club space, we're in Flyfish right now, which is gorgeous. I was here a couple weeks ago and it was jammed.
Yeah.
And obviously there's already a lot of clubs in New York.
Good ones.
So how do you think about competing? Mm-hmm. How do you decide which space to compete in? And how do you get a toehold in such a saturated space?
I believe the world is abundant. I think this is one of the great mistakes that people make in life. Nobody's winning is coming out of yours, if you're good enough. One, I just think that if you're good enough, there's always an opportunity for you to come in. Literally nothing scares me. Walmart doesn't scare me. Amazon doesn't scare me. Tesla doesn't scare me. Apple definitely doesn't scare me. Like, nothing's scary if you're good enough. I have a funny feeling that New York will have 20 successful private clubs in 5 years.
Really?
I think so. I think in general, humans, there's just a lot to it. First of all, in a private club business model, because of the membership fees, you can really over-deliver an experience. It's a different business model.
Well, one would hope for paying that kind of money.
That's exactly right. That's why when I look at this place, like, I was blown away, and then I had to remind myself, well, of course, like it should be better than like a place you don't pay a membership for, right?
Yeah.
Two, it's always high school. This is something people have to learn. Friends, it's always high school. Even if you go to a retirement home, it's fucking high school. It's always high school. And in high school, people they want to be cooler. They want to feel like they're better than. It's human psychology. And, I think club culture will help people scratch that itch.
Okay, interesting. So you looked at this market and you thought, okay, there's plenty of demand.
Yeah, and Flyfish was obviously an NFT membership.
Yes.
And so it launched 2.5 years ago. So that was a whole different thing. So there's just like always like different models, different things. There's just so many variables in business. Like it's a, you know, again, I like thinking about business. Obviously we're filming this right after the election, and I love thinking about business the way that the elections work. As you know, because you're in the business. The next morning, even that night, everyone loves to analyze the why it happened.
The post-mortem.
The post-mortem. Oh, Latino males this and I always am fascinated by people on TV, pundits, people in social media. They get surprised.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, how are you surprised? The only thing history will tell you is it's constantly changing. Mm-hmm. Temperament changes, humans change. Some of us in this room have changed our own points of view as a human, let alone groups of people and things of that nature. So what I think I'm good at, and what I implore anyone who operates something, it's actually tremendous parenting advice, is if you are not prepared for things to change every day, it's over. I couldn't implore all of you more to go look at what's going on TikTok Shop. There are people, I was in this room actually, a couple days ago, last week, TikTok had an event here for 100 people that are doing live shopping at scale, making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars a year in selling live on TikTok.
Wow.
Stuff. Hundreds in here. They knew everything. As a matter of fact, I was yelling right up there to all of them, like, please understand you're in your moment. You have to go hard right now because the masses don't know yet. And in 3 years, everyone's gonna know. And you're gonna be sad that you didn't go hard right now because this is your moment to land grab. It's like buying up real estate.
Yeah.
Like if you know Malibu's gonna be Malibu and you're just sitting there and the beachfront property is available for cheap, you were sad that you only bought one house instead of 3. Mm-hmm. If you know, you need to go all in. So they knew, they're already doing it. So I think live social shopping is gonna be a big deal. I believe if you look at what's going on in China, have you seen the video of the woman in China that just keeps moving the handbags? You probably saw the headline. She made $8 million in like 2 seconds. Did you guys see that? Like,
I didn't.
So in China, live social shopping has already happened. So here's my point of what I'm trying to say. This has already happened. There's tens and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of live shopping happening right now. Mm-hmm. I also know that a lot of people don't know that. It's in It's in that perfect spot.
Interesting. One thing that we're trying to do with these series as well is highlight some of the good things that are happening in New York. People who are innovating, and you've had such an incredible story, and you talk a lot about wealth inequality and prosperity and all of these things, and you were not born with a silver spoon in your mouth at all. So I would love to hear you speak about, growing up in New York and what opportunities that afforded you and why you've stayed here.
Well, look, Rego Park, Queens is like the most important place in the world to me. It's where my family immigrated to. So anyway, I was born in the Soviet Union. I came to the US in August of '78, or December. And it was really rough. I actually don't remember anything about the Soviet Union, but I remember literally the first days of Queens. I grew up in Queens, then I moved to Edison, New Jersey, then I moved back into Manhattan 20 plus years ago. I couldn't comprehend not living here for the rest of my life. You know, what New York has is what I love more than anything, which is balance. There's so much art, there's so much humanity, there's so much culture, there's so much more warmth than any people would ever realize. Like the way I see the jungle, and that's how I like it.
That's a wrap on today's episode of New York Next. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. You can also catch us on the New York Post YouTube channel. And of course, be sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates and behind-the-scenes content. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. Join the conversation and let us know what you think.